Reagan Gray, a former youth ministry worker and teacher, is charged with sexually abusing a teenage student. In this case, I've made 5 unsettling allegations against Gray. I appreciate you being here for Crime Remedy. My name is Annette Levy. Reagan Gray was a teacher at 2 different schools in Little Rock, Arkansas. The allegations against her, however, stemmed from her volunteer work at Emmanuel Baptist Church back in 2020. According to an affidavit charging Gray with first-degree sexual assault, in 2020, the head pastor of the church confronted her about text messages. The boy's parents discovered the affidavit, and Gray claimed the relationship was not physical. The church sent Gray to counseling but later allowed her to return to "There is a lot of crime here" without legal notice. It is said that Google Incognito tracks users' browser activity without their consent. One of our advertisers, Mass Towards Alliance, is assisting consumers in submitting compensation claims because they feel Google misled users regarding the privacy of its incognito browser. You can begin your claim with less than 10 questions if you have used Google Incognito at any point after 2016. Visit incognitoclaims.com directly. Once more, Cryfix is incognitoclaims.com. Cryfix Jonas Bilbor should come in so we can talk about some of these claims. Jonna, it's very vivid and graphic for this woman. Reagan Gray is accused of approaching a boy in the youth ministry at her church, and then one of the things she's accused of doing is encouraging him to send naked photos of himself. And then she is accused of sending photos of her chest, her buttocks, and her vaginal area to him on a daily basis. First of all, the irony of being a volunteer at a church and engaging in this type of behavior just adds to the horribleness of it. But I don't know what kind of defense this person is going to be able to mount because, look, they weren't even trying to be all that smart about this salacious behavior. And I don't think there's any doubt in her mind that she was dealing with a minor. Interestingly, though, I read that she's only charged with a single count of sex assault, which is very odd when you consider that they had a texting relationship for quite a long time. They could also add charges at grand jury. I mean, at this point, she's charged in county court, and she has another court appearance coming up in June, so they could always go to the grand jury and add additional charges. Do you see that possibly happening? Yes, that could happen. But the other thing, I mean, the elephant in the room, if you don't mind, is when we are dealing with these types of cases, the specifically older female person in a position of power, I'll put that in air quotes, like a teacher, or in this case, the volunteer at the church, and a younger child who male, for some reason, a lot of prosecutors and a lot of people tend to not give the defendant a pass, not at all, but they don't look at it as harshly as they would if it were reversed. And that does not seem to be changing, and we can go back to a lot of these cases from 15-20 years ago. It just doesn't seem to be changing. And that's a phenomenon that I can't quite understand. That's interesting, you point that out. She's free right now on bail. We'll be back in court in June, so it'd be interesting to see how they handle this. One thing is, concerning the allegations of how this was handled at the church. So the head pastor involved in this, according to the affidavit, takes her out of the youth ministry. He doesn't kick her out, but he sends her to counseling because she said this wasn't physical. It's just some text messages. She gets some counseling. And then they put her back in the youth ministry. That to me is shocking because she still has access to kids. And we don't know if this was just isolated to this one teenager. She was 23 at the time that this happened, allegedly in 2020. She's 26, now the kid was 15 and 16 when this was going on. So your thoughts on the fact that the head pastor sends her to counseling? She says it's not physical. Apparently it is physical, according to the complaint, and then sends her back into the youth ministry to do her choral volunteer work. Yeah, I have a number of thoughts about that, so if we give her the benefit of the doubt, and it's not physical, although I think the evidence is going to be pretty clear that it was, at least her victim said that it was, then you have to look at the church and say, number one, now they've opened themselves up for civil liability. And number two, well, I get that. I mean, that's what churches do, right? If somebody comes to them and they're having some sort of issue, it's incumbent upon them to try to help that person. But in this day and age, there was no way. Well, let me back up. If they thought that there was even the appearance of impropriety, probably would have been smarter to not allow her to return. And from my understanding, she was simply a volunteer. So it's not even like there was red tape involved. So that is just really, unless the church's position as we believe her, But that's G to have to play out right in a criminal court, most definitely. And I'm going to have an update for you on the head pastor here in just a minute or two. Let's go to our next allegation involved in this, and it's the teen identified. He's identified as V1 in the affidavit, said that he and Gray did not have penile vagal intercourse. Wanted V to stay pure, so this involved Gray allegedly performing oral sex on this boy, and then him in turn doing some things digitally to her. Yikes. So we're talking about church stuff here, staying pure. And this was kind of some weird rationalization, according to the document, that this would help him stay pure, because it wasn't going all the way. That's a predator mentality. That's definitely a predator mentality. And again, it won't matter much in the eyes of the law, because in that state, sex assault is all-encompassing. So she's still looking at anywhere from 10 to 40 years for a single count of sex assault. Nice try, but I guess you know what that is. That's sick. That's a perpetrator who is sick. And they'll probably never be able to prove or disprove that they had carnal knowledge of each other. That, in my opinion, will not hold up as a legitimate defense. They have her phone, her TikTok, her Snapchat, and I assume her other devices. They've made note of everything in the papers after all, and they're still going through it. You know, there may be more charges because this is being looked into by an FBI task team. She has also taught at a few other schools. She was Little Rock Christian Academy instructor before taking a leave of absence at Sylvania Hill Academy. We're investigating her departure from that particular school. We could probably infer that something was probably happening, in my opinion. Although we don't know, we're attempting to ascertain that. But things can get a little weird when we start talking about personnel matters. How would you refute this claim when there might be a lot more there? Yes, that will be extremely challenging. First and foremost, I suppose all defense lawyers must consider the evidence that is either already available or will soon be made available before determining how to present their case. But even with my criminal defense hat on, it looks bad at this early stage. If any of the accusations are true, there is clearly something psychologically and emotionally wrong with the accused, and usually you know to go back to an earlier point. Perhaps occasionally one of the reasons why prosecutors, courts, etc. I'm not sure if that will happen in this case, but I'm trying to figure out why we take such a light approach in these cases that are just all too common. It would be interesting for a prosecutor to come out and say it to get some comments from them, and maybe we will in some other cases that we've looked at over the last few months. Just an update for you though. You know, the reason we're handling the older female and the younger male less harshly could be that there's some sort of mental illness going on, not a defect or deficiency. Janine, those details regarding the lead pastor, I contacted the Baptist Church to inquire about their thoughts on all of this, and was informed that the head pastor, Stephen Smith, had left the organization. I asked the church secretary, but she wouldn't comment, so I was put in contact with someone who would cover for him while he was out of town for the entire week. This person won't be commenting, but the head pastor, who was somewhat involved in placing her in counseling and allowing her to return to counseling or the youth ministry, was interviewed by the FBI regarding these allegations. So, that's my big update on the Baptist Church. Thanks for watching Gossip Now.